The crisis in Vancouver is far from ordinary. It is one of those rare events that shake a city to its core, forcing every resident, investor, and politician to face the cold reality of their own vulnerabilities. A catastrophic waterline collapse has left an estimated 20,000 homes unlivable, plunging Vancouver into a housing disaster unlike anything the city has ever experienced. The consequences are immediate and severe: homes flooded, neighborhoods uninhabitable, and the real estate market, already struggling under the weight of rising prices and uncertain regulations, now teetering on the brink of collapse. Vancouver's once thriving housing market was already fragile. Prices had been rising steadily for years, with foreign investment and limited housing supply driving prices beyond the reach of most locals. Developers scrambled to keep up, while city officials wrung their hands, promising to address the crisis without ever taking meaningful action. But now, with the waterline failure exposing the city's crumbling infrastructure, the facade of stability has shattered. The floodwaters have not only devastated homes but also wiped out any remaining hope for a quick recovery. The waterline failure was sudden and massive. It hit without warning, catching city officials and residents by surprise. A series of broken pipes and valves led to widespread flooding in some of Vancouver's most expensive neighborhoods, leaving homes submerged and residents stranded. Thousands of families were forced to evacuate in the middle of the night, their homes left behind, damaged beyond repair. In many cases, the water has infiltrated the very foundations of these once pristine properties, making them uninhabitable for the foreseeable future. For those who were lucky enough to escape with their lives, the financial toll has been devastating. Many homeowners are now faced with the grim reality of being unable to recover their losses. The insurance market, already strained from years of rising premiums and regulatory changes, is ill-equipped to handle the scale of this disaster. Homeowners, who had once hoped that their property would be their safety net, now find themselves with little more than a pile of debt and a sinking feeling that the worst is yet to come. As the immediate aftermath of the collapse sets in, the true scope of the damage is becoming clear. Estimates put the number of homes affected by the waterline failure at over 20,000, with the city struggling to come to terms with the fact that these properties are, for all intents and purposes, lost. For a city that has already seen its housing crisis deepen in recent years, this is a blow that may be impossible to recover from. The economic ramifications are already being felt. Construction projects that were already struggling to get off the ground have now ground to a halt. Developers who had been working tirelessly to meet the demand for new homes are now facing bankruptcy. With homes uninhabitable and no clear solution in sight, many have been forced to abandon their projects entirely. And the effects extend beyond the construction industry. Banks, who had been financing these development projects, are now pulling out, unable or unwilling to risk more money in an already unstable market. Mortgage rates, which had been rising steadily for years, are now skyrocketing, leaving homeowners who were already struggling to make ends meet in an even more precarious position. The ripple effect on the broader economy is undeniable. Vancouver's once booming real estate market is now in freefall, with home values plummeting at an alarming rate. But the chaos doesn't end there. As Vancouver grapples with the immediate aftermath of the waterline collapse, the city is beginning to realize just how unprepared it was for a crisis of this magnitude. Years of underinvestment in infrastructure have left the city vulnerable to disasters like this one. The water lines, which had been in desperate need of repair for years, were simply ignored. Politicians, too focused on short-term goals and re-election bids, failed to address the systemic issues that have plagued Vancouver's infrastructure for decades. And now, the city is paying the price for that neglect. What's worse, the collapse has exposed even deeper cracks in Vancouver's real estate system. The housing crisis, which had already been spiraling out of control, is now accelerating at a terrifying pace. The failure to maintain critical infrastructure like water lines is just the beginning. The city's entire housing market, once seen as a safe haven for investors and a symbol of Vancouver's prosperity, is now crumbling before our eyes. The impact on the people of Vancouver has been nothing short of devastating. Residents are left without homes, their lives upended by a disaster they never saw coming. But beyond the physical destruction, the emotional and financial toll is even more profound. The loss of a home is not just the loss of a property, it's the loss of a sense of security, of a place to call your own. Families who had once dreamed of home ownership are now facing a harsh new reality. The Vancouver housing market is no longer a place where dreams can be built. As the weeks drag on and the damage continues to unfold, The human cost of this crisis becomes ever clearer. Families are left scrambling to find alternative housing, with limited options available. The city's rental market, already stretched to its breaking point, is now unable to meet the demand for temporary housing. As a result, many are left without a roof over their heads, forced to rely on family, friends, or temporary shelters while they wait for some semblance of normalcy to return. But normalcy seems farther and farther away with each passing day. The government's response has been slow and, in many cases, ineffectual. C. Premier John Horgan, who has long faced criticism for his handling of the province's housing crisis, is now under fire for his failure to act quickly enough in the wake of this disaster. The provincial government has promised relief, but the reality is that many residents are now looking at a long, painful recovery. Vancouver's leaders have failed to address the root causes of the housing crisis, and now they are failing to address the immediate aftermath of the Waterline collapse. While politicians bicker over the best course of action, the people of Vancouver are left to pick up the pieces. The collapse of the Waterline is just the latest in a series of failures that have brought the city to its knees. If something doesn't change soon, Vancouver may never recover from this catastrophe. But the question remains, what's next? With 20,000 homes lost and no clear solution in sight, the future of Vancouver's housing market is uncertain at best. The city's infrastructure, once thought to be a symbol of strength and progress, has proven to be fragile and neglected. The Waterline collapse has exposed the truth. Vancouver's housing crisis is not just a housing problem, it's an infrastructure problem, a political problem, and a crisis of leadership. As Vancouver struggles to recover, the rest of Canada watches closely. Could this disaster be the tipping point for the entire country's real estate market? If Vancouver can't bounce back from this catastrophe, what does that mean for other cities facing similar challenges? With the global economy already on shaky ground, this crisis may just be the beginning of something much larger. Vancouver's housing market may be down, but the rest of Canada is now holding its breath, wondering if the ripple effects will reach them next. As the aftermath of the Waterline collapse continues to unfold, the human cost of this crisis becomes even more apparent. Families who once called Vancouver home now find themselves displaced, scrambling to find shelter in a city already facing a severe housing shortage. The uncertainty and anguish in their voices are undeniable, as many are left wondering where they will live, how they will rebuild their lives, and whether they will ever be able to return to the homes they once cherished. It's not just the physical destruction of homes that's taking a toll, it's the emotional devastation. Vancouver's residents have invested years, sometimes decades, of their lives into these homes, only to have it all washed away in a matter of hours. Home ownership, once seen as a symbol of success and security, has now become a painful reminder of loss. Families who once believed in the stability and promise of Vancouver's real estate market are now forced to grapple with the stark reality that the city's housing system has failed them. Take the case of Maria and her family. They had saved for years to buy a home in Vancouver's East End, a modest but beloved property that was supposed to be their safe haven for the foreseeable future. Now, Maria finds herself with nothing but a flooded house and mounting bills. Her mortgage is still due, but the bank is offering no relief. "How do I even begin to explain this to my children?" she says, her voice breaking with emotion. "We thought we were safe here, and now it feels like the city has let us down." Maria's story is far from unique. In the days following the collapse, countless families have shared similar tales of financial strain, uncertainty, and fear. As the cost of rebuilding mounts, many residents are wondering how long they can hold on before the burden becomes too much. For some, the emotional toll is already unbearable. The stress of finding new housing, dealing with insurance claims, and the constant uncertainty of whether or not they will ever return to their homes is taking a severe toll on their mental health. And it's not just homeowners who are affected. Renters, too, are feeling the heat. With 20,000 homes rendered uninhabitable, the demand for rental properties has surged, further driving up prices in an already inflated market. Vancouver's rental crisis, which had already been escalating for years, has now reached a breaking point. Tenants who once believed they could find affordable housing are now being priced out of the market, unable to find a place to stay. Some have resorted to moving in with family members or even living in temporary shelters as they await government relief that seems unlikely to come anytime soon. The government's response to the crisis has been slow and, in many cases, inadequate. Premier John Horgan's office issued a statement promising to take immediate action, but those promises have yet to materialize in any tangible way. The provincial government has pledged financial aid to affected families, but the details of that aid remain unclear, and many are questioning whether it will be enough to provide real relief. With no clear plan for rebuilding the destroyed homes and no immediate action to address the systemic issues within the city's housing market, residents are left in a state of limbo. At the heart of this crisis is the failure of Vancouver's infrastructure. The city's water lines, which were already in need of repair, were simply ignored for years by both local and provincial officials. The collapse of the water line wasn't a freak accident, it was the result of years of neglect and a lack of investment in critical infrastructure. Politicians, too focused on re-election campaigns and short-term goals, failed to address the deeper issues that were brewing beneath the surface. Now, Vancouver is paying the price for that failure. But it's not just the waterline collapse that exposes Vancouver's vulnerability. The city's entire housing system is in disarray. Construction projects that were already struggling to meet demand are now on hold indefinitely. Developers, who were once at the forefront of Vancouver's housing boom, are now filing for bankruptcy in droves. With 20,000 homes gone and no clear solution in sight, many are questioning whether the city can ever recover from this disaster. The housing market, once a symbol of Vancouver's prosperity, is now a ticking time bomb. The waterline collapse has sparked a chain reaction that is unraveling the entire housing system. Prices have plummeted, and with no new developments coming online, the city's housing shortage is set to worsen. Vancouver's real estate market, once one of the most desirable in the world, is now a cautionary tale of how quickly a thriving city can collapse under the weight of its own failures. As the city struggles to pick up the pieces, the question on everyone's mind is, can Vancouver survive this crisis? The answer, unfortunately, is unclear. Vancouver's future as a global real estate powerhouse is now in jeopardy. If the city cannot rebuild its infrastructure and restore confidence in its housing market, it may face years, if not decades, of economic stagnation. The ripple effects of this crisis are already being felt across Canada as investors, both domestic and foreign, pull their money out of Vancouver's real estate market. But the real threat goes beyond Vancouver. Experts are warning that this crisis could be a harbinger of things to come for cities across Canada. Vancouver's waterline collapse is not an isolated incident, it's a symptom of a much larger problem, a nationwide failure to invest in critical infrastructure. From Toronto to Calgary, cities across the country are grappling with aging infrastructure, rising housing costs, and inadequate government responses. The question is no longer whether Vancouver will recover, it's whether Canada's entire housing market is on the verge of collapse. This crisis has exposed the cracks in the foundation of Canada's housing system. The government's inability to address the underlying issues, combined with years of underinvestment in infrastructure, has left cities like Vancouver vulnerable to catastrophe. If something doesn't change soon, we could see more cities facing the same fate. As the situation in Vancouver continues to deteriorate, the question remains, can the city recover from this disaster, or is Vancouver's housing market on the brink of collapse? The answers are uncertain, but one thing is clear. The housing crisis is far from over, and if Vancouver's leaders don't take immediate and decisive action, the city may never recover from the damage caused by the waterline collapse. This crisis has shaken Vancouver to its core, but the true impact is just beginning to unfold. The question now is whether the city's leaders can find a way to rebuild, or whether Vancouver will become a cautionary tale for the entire nation. Only time will tell. What do you think? Is Vancouver's housing market beyond repair, or can it still recover from this catastrophic crisis? Let us know in the comments below by typing "Hey Shone" if you believe the city can bounce back, or #2 if you think Vancouver is facing its worst economic collapse ever. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for the latest updates on the housing crisis. This is just the beginning.